Barney was one of the most popular characters in the 1990s, expanding to over 200 countries, reaching millions of children in the process. But what if I told you that this soft fluffy dinosaur got this man 15 years in prison for shooting his neighbor in the chest just because he looked at his house? You see, this isn't just a story about Barney. If that's the only thing you came for, you might as well leave now, because by the end of this video, you will never see Barney the same way again. So buckle up, get your popcorn, because this is the untold story of Barney the dinosaur. In a small town in Texas, Cheryl Leach was a teacher for 7 years before she quit to get into the family business. A short while later, she was blessed with the first child, Patrick Leach, who made her make the ultimate decision of leaving that job as well to stay at home and take care of him. This meant that her husband, Jim Leach, would become the sole provider of the family because she wasn't working. When Patrick turned 2, she tried to look for a kids show for him, which is where she ran into a problem. In the 1980s, most of the kids shows that existed were targeted to an older demographic of children, and there wasn't much material for a child as young as Patrick. That was until she went to a video store one day and found a tape that went by the name of We Sing. When she took it home to Patrick, he was obsessed. He would play this same tape over and over again all the time. This gave Cheryl an idea. What if she made a show for Patrick that was not only fun for him to watch but also taught him something in the process? She teamed up with fellow mom Kathy Parker and video producer Dennis DeShazer to collaborate on the project. In the early drafts, Barney was supposed to be a teddy bear or a blanket, but the idea of a blanket was too hard to pull off, so they ultimately dropped it. However, something changed a short while later. A traveling dinosaur exhibit was trolling Dallas and Patrick had gone on to see them. He absolutely loved dinosaurs, and this gave Cheryl an idea. She went back to her team and told them about the idea of using Barney as a dinosaur, and it was agreed. This, however, brought some new problems. Dinosaurs aren't the most friendly looking animals out there, so if they were going to use Barney as a dinosaur, they'd need to redesign him and make him friendly for the target audience they had in mind. On the 29th of August 1988, they made their first release of Barney and the Backyard Gang, but there's something I haven't told you yet. When they first released Barney, as you'd expect, no one knew about it. It wasn't on any TV network yet, and that wasn't even the worst part. By the time they were releasing Barney, they didn't have any money left over for marketing, but Cheryl had a secret weapon. She gathered a team of her own, an army of Barney moms who ran word-of-mouth campaigns all over Texas, selling tapes and trying to get the Barney name off the ground. The Barney mom strategy worked because Barney went on to becoming very popular all around Texas, but outside the state, they still weren't known as much. But this would all change come 1991. Okay, so two very important events happened in 1991. The first one started a bit early in 1990 when Barney was picking up in popularity and the Barney team was doing live shows to promote it. But come 1991, they ran into a problem. Initially, when Barney was in production, the idea was to have the same person who was voicing Barney to also be in the suit. But Bob West, who was the initial voice of Barney, couldn't fit in the suit, so they had to find an alternative. This is how they ended up casting David Voss. He became the one in the suit from 1988 till 1991, which is when he left Barney to join the military. This meant that Cheryl and her team didn't have anyone to play Barney, and they had a show coming up, so they had to cast someone quick. As they were running auditions, someone in particular caught their attention. Enter David Joyner. The thing about David is that when he got into that costume, he didn't play Barney, he became Barney.
He made Barney the athletic Barney that he is today.
But wait, something isn't right here. This isn't why I'm telling you this. You see, David had a secret, and to some, you might consider it a very dark secret. What I haven't told you is, David isn't just an actor, he's also a healer. That's not particularly bad until you realize that he's not your everyday healer, he's a tantric sex healer. So what does he do?
I'm filled with loving energy.
I'm filled with loving energy.
As a tantric energy healer, I own my goddess power. I help goddesses reconnect with their sexual energy on a spiritual level.
If you do a simple Google search, tantric sex healing combines sexual activity with spiritual and yoga techniques to help you connect with your body more on a spiritual level. So you can kind of see the position that this put on the Barney team. On one hand, we have this amazing actor who's really good inside the costume, and on the other, we have this really weird background that he has, which, if we're being honest, isn't the most kid-friendly. And if people found out about this, well, we don't need to get into what would happen then. Don't forget that we don't have much time. We have this vacancy that needs to be filled before the next show, which we can't afford to cancel because last time I checked, we don't have all the money in the world. So they did what they had to do. They hired him. With a but, and this is a very huge but, they made him sign a contract that forbid him from speaking or practicing any forms of tantra when he was inside the costume. And that is exactly what he did. David Joyner went on to becoming the buddy of Barney from then on, but everything changed when this next event happened. Leora Rifkin was a little girl who didn't watch much TV, but one day during the Super Bowl Sunday of 1991, she asked her dad to take her to the video store. While looking through the different tapes, something caught her eye. She remembers seeing a red tape with a bluish purple dinosaur on it, wearing a sailor's hat in a boat full of kids. Something about it intrigued her, and she took it home with her. When she watched it the first time, she fell in love. She watched it again and couldn't get her eyes off of it. This time, her dad got curious. What is this that's so mesmerizing to her? This time, he sat down to watch it with her. What you didn't know is that it just so happened that Leora's dad, Larry Rifkin, was a TV executive at PBS in charge of programming. And it also just so happened, and stay with me on this one, PBS had also put out a call for more addition of preschool programming. The target demographic was children like her daughter. And seeing how much this show captivated her, he knew he'd struck gold. This led him to getting on a call with Cheryl Leach, and they struck a deal which brought Barney to PBS. But this time, they were going to do it a bit differently. PBS had the money to fund Barney, so they increased the budget, brought on some new characters, and gave Barney a fresh new purple look, and Barney and Friends was born. On 6th of April 1992, it aired for the first time, and everything exploded. Barney was now everywhere and was climbing the charts faster than ever, and soon enough, Barney had become the most watched preschool show on TV. But as Barney continued to climb the charts, something else was happening in the background, something that would later change the course of this entire story completely. As we said in the beginning, Barney was initially created for Patrick to keep him busy, and at first, this idea was very exciting for him and he loved him very much. But then, Barney started to steal his mom from him, and he started seeing her less and less, and to him, Barney was now all her mom was focusing on, and he became the older sibling that he never asked for, who was now getting all the attention. And this started to build resentment in him, but he wasn't the only one who was suffering. Jim Leach, who was his dad, was also feeling the void that his wife was leaving. Traditionally, the family setup was very simple. The wife stays at home while the husband goes out to provide. But now that Barney was doing well, Cheryl became the breadwinner, and this slowly started chipping away pieces of himself. And the first big crack happened when Jim quit his job to become a stay-at-home dad while Cheryl went out to work and provide for them. Jim became the only parent that Patrick ever saw regularly, but Jim was having problems of his own. Cheryl was now on top of the world. Her life's work was now doing well, and she was traveling to all these countries as Barney continued to expand. She continued to impact and reach millions of children all over the world, building and teaching them, while she also offered them a friend who taught them about love and kindness, making these children truly happy. Barney was more than a kids show, he was a friend to these children, but little did they know, this was the peak of Barney because everything was about to crumble. The 1990s were different, culture was different, being edgy and snarky was cool, and the young generation was all about rebellion and vulgarness. And guess who wasn't any of these things? It wasn't just the young generation, parents were also starting to hate Barney.
My name is Rob Curran, and my daughter, she loved Barney.
Rob had gone on a business trip, and when he came back, he expected his daughter to come running to him, excited to see him home. But when he got there, that didn't happen. So he decided to take matters into his own hands and do something. Robert knew that he couldn't be the only one who felt this way, so he created a club. He formed the I Hate Barney Secret Society, which gave parents an outlet for their anger.
With the I Hate Barney Secret Society, I just gave voice to all the fears of all the parents.
But the I Hate Barney Secret Society was just scratching the surface. Younger people took to other means for coping with their anger.
Purple dinosaurs must die. Now, what did lovable Barney do to deserve this?
This was an event called a Barney bashing, where anti-Barney groups would meet and resort to a more physical outlet for their anger. But why? This is the same question that Cheryl found herself with. She didn't understand why someone would take it upon themselves to go up against a kid show character. It didn't make sense to her, and unfortunately for her, it was about to get a whole lot worse. The anti-Barney campaign started to get out of hand. Rumors started going around that Barney was secretly gay and actually a predator and took advantage of the kids on the show. Barney was a drug dealer, Barney was a cult, Barney was Antichrist, and now it was leaving the online space and starting to get physical. People got assaulted for just dressing like Barney, and members of the cast started getting death threats live on radio. This made the Barney team want to fight back, so they started sending out cease and desist letters to anyone involved in any form of Barney bashing, and when things still got bad, they found a lawsuit against someone who was beating up a Barney mascot in front of an entire stadium for entertainment. What happened next made everything worse. The Barney team lost the lawsuit in the name of it was all satire and parody, and this became a problem for them because the kids who watched Barney couldn't understand why someone was beating him up and the fact that it was all in the name of satire and parody. This, however, became the least of Cheryl's problem because the biggest one was back at home. While all of this was going on, things back at home weren't exactly the smoothest. Patrick was having problems of his own and they were about to get a whole lot worse. As Patrick continued to get older, things at school weren't exactly the easiest. He was known as the Barney Kid, and as the Barney bashing continued to get worse, you can only imagine what he was going through. Things got a whole lot worse when he was diagnosed with a brain tumor and needed to seek help. When Cheryl found out about this, she was faced with a very hard decision. Who was she going to save? On one hand, you had her entire life's work. Barney had changed her life in ways that she couldn't even imagine, and allowed her to give her son a life that she probably wouldn't have been able to give her if it wasn't for the show. And on the other, you had Patrick, the one who she was doing all of this for, the one person who made any of this even happen. Who was she going to save? In 1998, Cheryl Leach announced her departure from Barney to focus on her son's wealth. You'd think that this is where the story ends, but just when she chose to settle down, things started to fall apart. A short while later, she separated from her husband, and a year later, in 2003, they ended up getting a divorce. This divorce took a huge toll on Jim, and a year later in 2004, he ended up taking his own life, and at this time, Patrick was just 18 years old. No one knew how much Jim was suffering until it was too late. Back at Barney, it was sold out to Hit Entertainment for $275 million when Cheryl Leach left, and soon after she did, more members of the cast left the show as well, and for many, they didn't have the easiest time outside. When Hit Entertainment bought Barney, they renewed it for another season, added a new character Rafe, and ran the show throughout the 2000s to try and make the most money they could. And they ran the show till 2011, which is when they finally cancelled it. You'd think that this would be the end for Barney, and you'd be right, but something else would come to happen a few years later that would change that answer. But first, let's go back to the Leach family. By 2013, Patrick Leach had already gotten married and had kids of his own, and one could say that he'd finally settled down, but this was far from the truth. After his dad passed away, he took to marijuana to numb the pain and indulged himself in drug use, which messed up his emotional stability. When he finally got into his own home, he never had the best relationship with Eric Shanks, who was his neighbor. They'd often run into arguments, but nothing physical. But that all changed the morning of January 9th, 2013. Eric was passing by Patrick's house, which had a no trespassing sign on it, and he stopped to take a look at it. And then he went on his way. As soon as he got to his house, Patrick came behind him and asked him why he was at his house, which clearly had a no trespassing sign. But that wasn't true because, as we remember before, Eric only stopped to take a look at it and then went on his way. But soon after, this turned into an argument, and Patrick pulled out a gun and pointed it at his neighbor. "Are you really going to shoot me?" Eric asked, the answer to which would soon be yes.
Barney the purple dinosaur may love everyone, but apparently not everyone associated with Barney shares that philosophy. Patrick Leach, whose mother Cheryl created the PBS character, has been arrested for shooting his Malibu neighbor with a .45.
Eric survived, but Patrick was now facing jail time. The prosecutors had proof that he was the one who did it. He was found with a rifle and a handgun while wearing a bulletproof vest. It was clear that Patrick had gone to Eric's house prepared for an altercation, but they struggled to understand why. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison, but just after 5 years of serving his sentence, the governor of Florida commuted his sentence and he was released. He went back to his family and has been living a quiet life ever since. In 2023, Barney returned to the screens, but this time, he was animated. He was now a Cocomelon ripoff and nothing like the Barney that once existed. The Barney who believed and taught about love and kindness and all of these things. The dinosaur who was more than a friend to millions of children all over the world. That Barney was now gone and he was now replaced by a new Barney. A Barney who wasn't being himself and was trying to be like everyone else so people could like him. But what's beautiful is the original Barney that once existed is still in the millions of hearts that once watched him, and if we're being honest, that is all that matters. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really enjoyed making it. It took me a very long time to make. I really hope you enjoyed it. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subs by the end of the year, so if you'd like to support me along this journey, please subscribe down below and leave a comment. Tell me what was your favorite thing about Barney, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.